You're not actually living your life. You're living a movie that your mind is playing for you, and your mind lies to you all the time. Every night, before you go to sleep, you've died a dozen times in your head. You've been betrayed, abandoned, humiliated, lost everything, all without leaving your bed. And then the day begins, and this inner theater continues. You walk through your day as if something bad is about to happen, as if an invisible disaster is following close behind. But that disaster never arrives. It never existed. And yet, you suffer. Have you noticed that most of the conversations you have are with yourself? Internal arguments, mental rehearsals of fights that never happened, preparing excuses for accusations no one has made? It's like there's an enemy living inside your head pretending to be you, and this enemy has only one goal: to keep you trapped in the expectation of pain, as if suffering could keep you safe, as if being prepared for the worst could stop it from happening. Robert Adams once said, "You're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. Everything you believe is wrong only because you believe it." Hearing that feels almost offensive, because your pain seems real. Your fear feels almost physical. But what Adams was saying, and what you need to hear, is that there's something far worse than your problems: the belief that they're inevitable. You don't have to believe in spirituality, in energy, or in some guru, but you do have to face this. Your mind has built a world where everything goes wrong, and you're living in it as if it were your only option. It isn't. You've been kidnapped by thoughts, by beliefs, by voices that aren't even yours, but that you repeat like commandments. This isn't exaggeration, it's observation. People die every day without ever experiencing a single moment of true peace. Not because they lacked love, money, or opportunity, but because their minds were a battlefield. And no one wins a war against an imaginary enemy. So let me ask you a question. Are you actually facing real problems, or have you just learned to live as if you were? The things you call problems might just be thoughts repeated so many times that they turned into your reality. Have you noticed that suffering doesn't even need a real reason to exist? It only needs a story, a distorted story repeated so often it became sacred. The mind is brilliant, but when it's left on autopilot, it's not just confused, it's cruel. It's a factory producing distorted versions of reality 24 hours a day with no supervision. And worst of all, you believe everything it makes. Robert Adams said, "There is no suffering in the now. What you feel is only memory and projection." You're not suffering because of what's happening right now. You're suffering because of what you think is about to happen, or because of what already happened and you can't let go. In other words, you're at war with things that aren't here. That's the silent tragedy of most people's lives. They don't live in reality. They live in anticipation, in guesses, in mental fantasies about futures that never arrive or pasts that never return. Neuroscience has mapped a brain network called the default mode network, which is linked to rumination, repetitive thoughts, and internal stories. This network activates when you're not doing anything. While your body rests, your mind tells tragedies. That's why so many people break down on Sunday nights, in the shower, or when trying to sleep. With no external distractions, the internal machinery goes into overdrive. We've normalized this suffering. People say things like, "I'm scared of the future," or "I can't stop thinking about the past." These phrases sound poetic, but they're confessions. They're signs that we're living inside a man-made system of chronic suffering, a system built by our own minds. People live as if they're emotionally hunted, not by others, but by their own thoughts. A woman avoids relationships because she's terrified of betrayal, even though she's never been betrayed. A man sabotages his career because he's convinced he's not good enough, despite proof otherwise. Someone can't enjoy anything good because they're always waiting for it to fall apart. They aren't suffering because of the world, they're suffering because of how they interpret it. The more you fight these thoughts, the stronger they become. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." You believe your thoughts because no one taught you to question them. Everything you feel started as a thought, and a thought doesn't care about truth. It follows old patterns, unresolved traumas, outdated versions of yourself. That's why so many smart people suffer foolishly. If you believe you're in danger, your body reacts, your heart races, your breathing shortens. Even if nothing is out there trying to hurt you, you're reacting to a lie inside. The mind creates suffering and the body pays. This mechanism is automatic. A hidden trauma sparks a thought, the thought triggers an emotion, the emotion feeds back into the thought, the cycle closes. There you are, reliving the same pain as if it were new. It's not new, it's just repeated. Freedom begins when you see thought as just thought, Robert Adams said, "If you stop believing the thought, it disappears because it has no life of its own." It's not about stopping thinking. It's about stopping the belief in everything you think. The mind wants you to react, to stay inside the game, but if you can see the story without acting in it, the spell breaks. Everything you're feeling might not be real. It might just be a stray thought repeated, reinforced, and finally worshipped. A problem that never actually existed but gained power because you gave it attention. The mind is a factory, but you can turn off production. Everything you feel started as a thought. And the problem is, thoughts don't care about truth. They follow old patterns, unresolved traumas, and outdated versions of yourself. That's why smart people can suffer so foolishly. If you believe you're in danger, your body reacts. Your heart races, your breathing shortens. Even if nothing is actually threatening you, you're responding to a lie inside. The mind creates the suffering and the body pays the price. This process is automatic. A hidden trauma sparks the thought. That thought triggers an emotion. The emotion strengthens the thought. The cycle repeats. You relive the same pain over and over as if it were new. It's not new. It's just repeated. The first step toward freedom is seeing a thought as just a thought. Robert Adams said, "If you stop believing the thought, it disappears because it has no life of its own." It's not about stopping thinking. That's impossible. It's about stopping the belief in everything you think. The mind wants your attention. It wants you to react. It wants to keep you trapped in its stories. But if you can see the story without participating in it, the spell breaks. Everything you feel might not be real. It might just be a stray thought repeated and worshipped until it became sacred. A problem that never really existed, but gained power because you gave it attention. Your mind is a factory, but you can turn off production. Most of your reactions are not decisions. They are programs running in the background, installed long before you even knew what a self was. Your fears, your habits, your automatic responses, they are inherited, learned, copied from others. They feel like you, but they are not. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." The more you fight your thoughts, the stronger they become. That's why people stay stuck in patterns they desperately want to escape. The ego clings to suffering because it thinks suffering is identity. People become so attached to pain that without it, they feel empty. They define themselves by their struggles. The anxious person becomes the anxiety. The abandoned person becomes the abandonment. The sad person becomes sadness. And the mind rewards this. It gives attention, meaning, even a false sense of control. But here's the truth. Pain is not identity. Pain is a signal. Pain is a teacher. It only becomes permanent when you mistake it for who you are. Robert Adams explained it clearly. The mind likes pain because it makes it feel alive. But that is a lie. Peace is who you are. Everything else is conditioning. Observing your mind without reacting is the start of real freedom. When the old program runs and you don't click the button, it loses power. When you see the trigger but don't pull, the pattern fades. You act instead of react. You decide instead of repeat. That's the beginning of real silence. Not silence of the mouth, but of the soul. The soul that no longer obeys what was never truly its own. Every attempt to control life comes from fear. Every fear comes from the illusion that you should be able to control something. Modern life amplifies this. We obsess over predicting, adjusting, calculating, trying to prevent pain that is inevitable. But control is impossible. You cannot hold love, health, time, attention, or life itself in your fists. The more you try, the more it escapes. Anxiety is not an excess of future. It is an excess of control. It is trying to secure tomorrow with today's energy and failing, because life is not a system you can fix. We see this everywhere. The person who rewrites an email 40 times to be perfect. The parent who imposes rules to shield their child from pain. The partner who creates drama to feel in control. None of this is about the other person, it's about you. Your mind creating problems so it can feel the relief of solving them. False heroism. Functional neurosis. Control is a child's attempt to protect itself from pain it once couldn't escape. Pain is unavoidable. Trying to avoid it causes all unnecessary suffering. Robert Adams said, "There is nothing to fear. Everything is exactly as it should be." This is almost unbearable for a controlling mind. It asks you to surrender. The mind hates surrender. It wants the illusion of being in command. But surrender is not passivity. It's intelligence. It's the recognition that life flows beyond your narrative. When you surrender, the internal war ends. You stop fighting, and for the first time, you can truly act rather than react. Freedom begins when you stop trying to control what was never yours.
The ego is not just vanity. It's an illusion. The illusion of a separate self controlling, deciding, judging, choosing. In reality, everything simply happens. You never chose to exist. You didn't choose your body, your brain chemistry, your family, the time you were born, or the traumas that shaped you. And yet you act as if you were the author of all your feelings, as if you controlled the movie, when really you were just the screen on which it plays. This realization is terrifying for the ego, but it is also liberating. You can stop struggling, stop carrying the weight of the world, stop trying to control waves that have always been bigger than you. Suffering is the direct result of resistance. Resistance comes from believing life shouldn't be this way. But life doesn't follow a script based on your opinion. The paradox is simple. The more you resist what is, the more trapped you become. The more you let go, the more space you have. Robert Adams said, "You only suffer because you believe something should be different than it is." Accepting life doesn't mean liking it or giving up. Acceptance is deep intelligence. It's seeing what is and allowing it to show you what it wants. That's surrender. And surrender isn't something you do. It happens when the ego tires of playing God. This is where real freedom begins. When surrender happens, clarity is born. You act better when you stop forcing. You respond more accurately when you're not trapped in fear. You live with more presence when you stop trying to conquer life. Notice what happens when someone truly surrenders. Resentment fades. Hurry dissolves. Anxiety ends because the future is no longer a threat. Forgiveness emerges naturally. Comparison disappears because there's nothing to prove. This is not magic. It's real, physiological, spiritual, and rational. Your nervous system relaxes, your brain quiets, energy flows, and the internal conflict that exhausts you ceases. Robert Adams explained, "You are not your thoughts. You are the silent space in which they arise." This awareness does not need to be understood. It needs to be lived. Living this is simple, yet it seems inaccessible. You just stop. Stop arguing with life. Stop demanding answers. Stop wanting everything your way. Even for a few seconds, this stopping brings peace. And this peace doesn't depend on circumstances. It doesn't require money, love, a resolved past, or a guaranteed future. It only requires presence. Full, silent, complete presence. What Robert Adams taught was not a path. It was a no path. What you are seeking is already here. You don't need more effort. You need less. Less control, less defense, less thinking, less identity. When all that falls away, what remains is not the end. It is you. Without masks, without fear, without needing to understand, just being. And for the first time, that is enough. You are not alone in this. If you have listened, if you felt something stir inside, that alone is a form of transformation. While the world pushes you outward, accelerates you, demands more versions of yourself and less essence, there is a space here where you can breathe, feel, and think without hurry or pretense. Here, truth is revealed quietly, and you are part of it. When you watch, comment, or share, you help keep this space alive. That alone is meaningful, but if it touches you deeply, you can go further. By joining the channel, you help continue creating with depth, care, and beauty. More than that, You enter a closer circle where exchange is direct, content is exclusive, and superficiality is left out. And if you want to contribute one time, there's the Super Tanks feature below, a way to say, this touched me, this mattered. But even if you do nothing, just being here helps. Every view, every comment, every share keeps this message alive. This space isn't mine, it's ours. This silence that welcomes, this content that frees, this space that provokes, it's made with you. So breathe, feel, and if it's real for you, support however you can. But above all, carry this with you. The only goal here is your awakening. And when you awaken, everything changes.
Awakening doesn't happen because you fix anything. It happens when you stop resisting. When you stop trying to control, to predict, to protect, to force, to be perfect, to be loved all the time, to be invulnerable. All of that is just another way of suffering from problems that never existed except in your desperate attempt to stop them. Some people don't want to heal because deep down they prefer suffering to disappearing. This is one of the hardest truths Robert Adams revealed. There is a hidden pleasure in pain, a twisted sense of identity that keeps people attached to suffering even when they say they want to change. The logic is subtle but dangerous. If I stop suffering, who am I? If I heal this wound, what remains of me? Many aren't attached to the pain itself, but to the meaning it gives, the role it plays, the story it tells. Even if it's a story of failure, rejection, abandonment, or injustice, it is still a story. And the mind prefers a wounded self over the empty space of not knowing who it is. Adams saw this clearly. The ego feeds on drama. Stop suffering, and the ego dies. Pain becomes identity. You are not just sad, you are a sad person. You are not just anxious, you are anxious. You are not just abandoned, you are abandoned. When suffering becomes definition, giving it up feels like giving yourself up. This is the invisible addiction. Pain sustaining the ego. Pain that guarantees attention, meaning, and a sense of control over others. Many people learn early that they are only seen when they are broken. Suffering becomes a language, a way to belong, a disguised social currency. You've seen it. People sabotaging themselves when life goes well, starting fights when peace settles, losing interest when calm arrives, creating tension and drama just to return to their comfort zone. Pain. Deep psychology calls this the secondary gain of suffering. As long as the gain exists, healing cannot be a real choice. Real examples. A woman wants a stable relationship but repeatedly chooses unavailable partners, confirming her old story that she will never be chosen. A man complains about not having time but rejects any attempt at organization because chaos justifies his sense of importance. Someone says they want inner peace but engages in online fights because conflict feeds their sense of relevance. Adults carrying childhood resentments like medals because letting go would mean admitting they can move on. And that feels scary. Robert Adams didn't soften the truth. You are always exactly where you want to be. If you didn't want to be there, you would have changed. This statement hits the ego hard. It strips away victimhood, exposing silent complicity in maintaining your own prison. This isn't about guilt, it's about awareness. You're not to blame for being used to pain, but now that you know, you are responsible for not continuing it. The mind will resist. Like any addict, it will try to convince you that pain is normal, part of who you are, part of life. It will romanticize tragedy, dramatize memories, sabotage new choices, tell you that healing is denying your story. It's all a lie. Healing honors your story precisely because you no longer want to repeat it. Healing doesn't come from thinking or repeating phrases, it comes from radical presence, observing suffering with cold, loving attention, seeing how it activates, why it activates, what fear supports it. That is how the addiction loses power. When you see the script activating but don't play it, when you notice the trigger but don't pull it, when pain arises but you don't merge with it, you only observe. Robert Adams compared it to a bad dream. Suffering only seems real while you are asleep. Waking up is not magic. It is painful lucidity. It is breaking free from the comfort of suffering. It is leaving behind an identity that hurts but clings. Then something surprising happens. There is no identity outside of pain, but there is freedom. And freedom is what remains when you no longer need to be anyone to justify being alive. You're not tired because of work. You're exhausted from fighting all the time. Fighting to be accepted, to understand, to predict, to avoid feeling, to keep a collapsing identity upright. This is the great exhaustion of the human soul. It has no weapons, no noise. It is internal, constant, quiet, chronic. Robert Adams said with devastating tenderness, "Stop resisting. Peace begins when the war ends, and the war always starts inside you. Surrender is not passivity. It is the opposite of giving up. It is wisdom. It is recognizing that life's flow is far smarter than any story your mind can create. It is the end of trying to be someone in the beginning of surrendering to what already is. To reach this, you must face the ego. Ego not as vanity, but as illusion. The illusion of a self that controls, judges, decides. In truth, everything happens. You never chose to exist. You never chose your family, your body, your mind, your traumas. You're here, breathing, but you think you're the author of all you feel. You are only the screen. This realization terrifies the ego, but it frees you. You can stop fighting, stop carrying the world, stop trying to control waves bigger than you. Suffering comes from resistance. Resistance comes from believing life should be different, but life is exactly as it should be. The more you resist, the more trapped you are. The more you let go, the more space you have. Robert Adams said, "You only suffer because you believe something should be different than it is." Accepting what is doesn't mean liking it. It means seeing it clearly, without judgment, and allowing it to teach you. That is surrender, and surrender is not the end. It is the beginning. What comes after is not passivity. It is clarity. You act more effectively. You respond with more precision. You live more fully. Resentment disappears. Anxiety fades. Forgiveness flows. Comparison dissolves. Peace arrives. It doesn't depend on money, love, past, or future. It depends only on presence. Total, silent, complete presence. This is the freedom Robert Adams revealed. You don't need effort. You need less. Less control, less defense, less thinking, less identity. When all that falls away, what remains is you. Unmasked, fearless, fully alive. And for the first time, that is enough.